Are digital collectibles set to take over and dominate over sports cards in the long run? The short answer, in my opinion, is no, but I think there's a lot of nuance to this topic, and I want to talk through it. Stick around. Hello to all my sports card collectors, investors, all of my collectibles friends. It's another day, another card video. Guys, we are marching towards the end of 2022. I still can't believe it. We've only got a couple more days left in the year. I hope that you all are finishing strong, and we're looking forward to a great 2023. If you're new here, you're looking for just about daily sports card and collectible style content, hit that big red button down below, the subscribe button. We will continue on with more collectibles type sports card stuff. We will keep it coming in 2023. Also connect with me on IG at SportsCardDad, where I share a lot of my pickups, and then also on Twitter as well. Typically when I'm angry about my New Orleans Saints completely blowing a game, and then I go on an absolute tirade. So if you're interested in that, I'm on Twitter, the SportsCardDad. All right, guys, we have seen the rise of sports cards over the last few years, and then kind of the eventual kind of correction that's come over the last 12 to 18 months. But what was the other thing that kind of did the same thing? Digital collectibles, NFTs. NFTs has really become kind of a dirty word in the collectible space nowadays, just based on how it formed. A lot of influencers really raking it in, the rug pulls, and the average Joe collector slash investor of NFTs mostly got smoked in that game over the last couple years. Kind of the big rise and the eventual fall. Really, you don't hear a lot of talk about this. It was all over the Twitter sphere. It was on YouTube. And now a lot of the channels that I used to follow and the accounts I used to follow on whether it be IG or Twitter or YouTube, a lot of them are gone, or they're just talking about something else or whatever. So, but it's a very interesting case study. And I kind of wonder, I mean, digital collectibles as a whole, it's not just the NFTs, but you also have, digital trading cards. You've got Funko Pops that are tied to an NFT. There's a digital component attached to some of these new products. So there are companies still dabbling in it. Fanatics and Michael Rubin have really kind of talked about in their mission statement, if you go back to interviews, Michael Rubin has talked about being kind of that one-stop shop for the digital collector. Those are the words that he used. So when I look at kind of the people, the big influencers as far as that run these companies, it's pretty obvious that they feel that digital collectibles is a part of the future. It might not be a huge part of the present, but part of the future for sure. And so when we look at today's NFTs, I think that it's like one of those things where we don't know what we don't know, and are today's NFTs, the NFTs for the last couple of years, is it kind of the Walkman or the beeper, technology to where these things could really kind of evolve over time? And it might take a long time. It might not be a couple of years. It might be 20 years. It might be 25 years. You see like the Walkman, the beeper, the camera. Remember when we all used to have cameras? We walked around taking pictures with a camera. And then we have CDs and then MP3s, and then now all of it is done on our iPhone or our Android. And when I look at the youth today, young people, they're playing video games, and there's a lot of upgrades that are, buying different skins or different things for your character and so forth. It's become a lot more mainstream than when I was playing video games, when you just paid $40, $50, you buy the game, you play the game, and there's no in-game purchases, upgrades. Now the in-game purchases, upgrades are very common nowadays. And so if there is kind of that digital collectible component, a way for you to kind of keep your stuff so that it doesn't just go away with that particular game or whatever, that's going to be interesting to see how that all unfolds in the future. Now, I have received a few comments on videos recently that kind of got me thinking about this topic as well. One of them is I'm really concerned about, the fact that when you go to a card show, it's really dominated by folks that are maybe in my age demographic, 35 to, let's say, 55. A lot of people chasing kind of the nostalgia. And while, yes, there's certainly young people that have gotten into the hobby over the last few years thanks to their parents or thanks to friends or whatever, but, is it enough to sustain kind of another boom boom time in 20, 25, 30 years, because that's essentially what we found here over the last few years. A perfect storm of events, but a lot of what drove it is, I was a big collector as a kid going back to 1987 to 1993, that block of time. And that was really kind of the last big sports card boom. And now 30 years later, you're seeing the same sort of thing. And so could it happen again in 30 years? I think that it will. That's my optimistic side. I do think that there's going to be young people that get into their midlife crisis, like I joke that I'm in, where 20, 25, 30 years down the line, they get back into the things that they enjoyed when they were young. And I think part of that's going to be digital and it's going to be physical collectibles cards. I don't think that's going to go away. But I've also got comments too of like, hey, this is stuff that we think is really cool. Are people going to think this is cool down the road? What if people don't think that it's cool anymore? And it's interesting too, because when you look at let's just take a look at sports cards in general. The one thing I can't stand that I hear a lot of kind of longtime hobbyists say, and I've said this before on different videos, is, there's always these ups and downs in the sports card market. There's always kind of these inflows, it's up and down. Well, when you don't add context to that, then it gives the impression that, what we saw in 2020 and then coming off of that is a fairly normal, we're just cycling. This is kind of the cycle that typically happens maybe over, a few years, 5 years, 10 years, like you would see in other markets. The problem with that, though, is when you look at really kind of historical data, I'll use a couple of card ladder cards here. I'll throw up some historical data here, and I'll use two very prominent players over the last 20 years. Some would argue the best players in their respective sports, LeBron James and Tom Brady, and I'll pick kind of their go-to rookie card, if you will, kind of their flagship. Now, some people can argue with me about what their flagship rookie card is, and I'm not going to pick like, patch auto stuff that's extremely rare, because that's not really a good representation, just not enough sales to give us an idea. But I'm looking at the 2003 Topps Chrome LeBron James rookie card and a PSA 10, and then I'm looking at the Bowman Chrome Tom Brady rookie card and a PSA 10. And if you look from 2003, 2004, where the data starts on the chart, and you go all the way up to about 2015, so you're talking 11, 12 years there, and I highly doubt that there was a spike from 2000 to 2004 that's missing from the chart. You can see that nothing really happens. This is stagnation, stagnant pricing for 15 years, 13, 14, 15 years. And so, then you see kind of the spike. And if you look at a lot of markets, whether it be crypto, real estate, sports cards, 2016 is that movement upward. That's where you really start to see it. I remember too, the housing market. 2015, I remember looking at houses, and then in 2016, I was like, man, house prices have really started to change, not realizing that they were going to go up so much more between 2016 and 2021. That was just kind of the beginnings of it. And so there's a pattern of this. Yes, you have people getting into cards, for a variety of different reasons. Nostalgia that started probably in that 2016 timeframe, but you're also seeing, crypto markets moving upwards, real estate moving upwards, a lot of assets moving upwards. And we're such a reactive society. When you think about like the last 12 months, for example, really every asset class has moved downward in price across the board. You look at everything, and the majority has really moved down. A lot of this, as we talk about, because of the federal fund rate, but we've now moved into everything's terrible, nothing is going to last, nobody's going to care about this, and that is very kind of typical of our society. When things are great, it's everything's great, and when things are terrible, it's everything's going to hell. But I think if we're able to keep our emotions in check and just kind of pick our spots, pick your spots, whatever that thing is, whether it's digital collectibles or physical collectibles or other sorts of things, whether it be real estate or crypto or whatever it is, whatever you think is good for you, just picking your spots, doing your research. This can actually be kind of a fun time because look, we have been over the last few years, a lot of these assets have been expensive. So who feels great about buying things at the top or close to the top? I certainly don't. And so that's why you've seen videos over the last few weeks of, hey, maybe there's some buying opportunities ahead. Charles Fuchs in my comments was basically, he came with a pretty harsh comment, but a lot of people are of this same opinion of like, hey, I'm going to start buying in about 6 months, 6 to 24 months. When everyone's going bankrupt was essentially his comment. But there is a belief there that, hey, there could be a big recession coming. And of course, people liquidate and you see prices move down. And it's like, if you don't think that prices can move down past, pre-pandemic pricing, all you have to do is look at 2004 to 2015 for a lot of these collectibles. And you can see that it can certainly go lower. There was a long period of time where LeBron James and Tom Brady were winning titles And were their cards spiking every time they won the Super Bowl? They kept on adding titles? No, there wasn't really a lot of action going on. And so that's what's kind of cool, I guess, if you were a collector or were a long-term thinker of this space, is there really could be some nice stuff popping up over the next couple of years. And digital collectibles, I think, are part of that mix. Now, again, digital collectibles might not be for everybody. For me, Funko Pops I'm just not into them. You know, there's certain collectibles, I'm just not into it. And not that I don't think that Funko Pops are cool for certain people, and now they're signing them, and now they're grading them. You know, look, to each their own. It's not a knock on Funko Pops. For me, it's just not my thing. But I don't think that this version of NFT, this version of digital collectibles that we're seeing today is the end game. I do think it's going to evolve. It might evolve 3 or 4 different times. It might be like what my son with Pokemon, Charmander turning into a Charizard or whatever. You know, there's evolutions, you know, to some of this stuff. And I'm so curious to see what all of this looks like. Part of why we do this is just kind of document the journey and follow it all along. 20 years down the road, what are we going to be looking at? You know, what is this going to be? Is it all going to be tied together? You know, where you do have a digital collectible and a physical collectible, it's all tied together. They figured out the security. They figured out the coin attached to it, the token or whatever. You know, even with crypto, you know, a lot of this stuff is really in its infancy. And yes, maybe crypto goes away and there's nothing to it. Maybe there's absolutely nothing that's blockchain related moving forward. But if there is, it will evolve. It will grow and continue to evolve over time. The internet itself didn't just happen the way that it is today. It had to evolve over time. The technology took a lot of time for it to kind of move into place. So these are all the things I think that are very interesting. And I know that there's some people that watch that are kind of into both digital collectibles, physical collectibles. I also know there's a lot of people that are absolutely zero in on digital collectibles. I guess the one thing too I wonder is there going to be enough money to go around to sustain kind of all of it? And I do think that people that are very defensive of physical sports cards, they get very defensive over digital collectibles, especially when digital collectibles are touted as better than sports cards, which I don't think that's a great selling point for digital collectibles. It's a completely different thing. It's a completely different widget, if you will. So as long as you kind of understand those differences and understand that probably both have value, ups and downs and pros and cons and that sort of thing, then great. But will there be enough, I guess, dollars to go around in the future, or bitcoins, depending on what you believe, in 20, 25 years, for everybody to be able to kind of have an amazing digital collection and also have an amazing physical collection? It'll be very fun to watch. But my long-winded answer to this is I don't think that physical sports cards are a thing that ever goes away. I think it's really kind of entrenched in American history at this point. You hear it all the time. There's 100+ years of history in sports cards, starting with baseball cards and the tobacco cards going way, way back. You've got presidential cards going back to the 1800s. Cards itself are just a part of global history, but especially American history. And so I just don't see that ever really changing. What people actually buy, sell, collect, and how they do it, that will be the thing to watch as we move into, 20 years down the road. Physical card shows and those sorts of things. Will we be going and doing kind of the physical interacting, or will we be putting on some sort of a headset and going into some virtual world to buy, sell cards, or even physical cards? Will it be like we put glasses on and then order something away or whatever, go into some sort of virtual showroom and look at it, the virtual card show, look at the thing we want, hit our Amazon click button, and a drone drops it at our house an hour later. That's the type of stuff. People think it's nuts, but 20, 25, 30 years of additional technology, it's going to probably look a lot different than it does today. So anyway, guys, kind of a fun, open-ended, we'll end 2022 with Skynet type discussions. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.